Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to continue my series by looking through another hand I was involved in at the stream table as we are on the stone bubble of the 50K PPC from this summer at the WSOP. And I started the video playback here at this moment because I wanted to call attention to a very small thing that I never saw in the first run through of this video, which is that João Vieira here on the button gets dealt ace-6 offsuit in limit hold'em and elected to fold. We are on the stone bubble, and we can see that he has 11 big bets in his chip stack, and he's a very studious player. So it's very noteworthy when you see these deviations pre-flop from a good player. And I'm not sure if I would have found that fold or not, but it makes a lot of sense. He's got the tournament chip leader with piles of chips in the small blind, Albert Daher with 4.2 million. He's got me in the big blind with a reputation for being a little bit sticky and stubborn, let's say, especially in limit hold'em, and he decides to just go ahead and let go of a hand that can be very difficult to play, as you often do have to get to showdown with ace high, which can be tricky. So we take note of that, but then we move on to the actual interesting part of the hand, which is a blind battle between myself and the chip leader Albert Daher. He opens Jack-7 suited. I would be opening quite wide in his spot here, and certainly a very reasonable hand, and I have King Jack off in the big blind. One thing that's kind of funny about this hand as we go through it, I'm playing it without commentary, but the commentator Jared Blesnick did not really like the way I played this hand in the moment, and we'll go ahead and take a look in PioSolver and see whether or not Pio agrees. I flat here in the big blind with King Jack off. We're going to take a look at the pre-flop decision here in a moment, but I want to go ahead and move a little bit forward here as we see a very spicy 10-9-5, 2 hearts flop. I have no hearts in my hand. Albert has a gut shot. He has a big range advantage here, and he decides to go ahead and continuation bet. Looks pretty reasonable to me without going into the solver. And I have a bit of a decision. Clearly, my hand is not a fold, and it's a call between raise or call. The commentator really liked raising in my spot, and I went with a call. And again, we're going to go ahead and take a look at that in the PioSolver in a moment. We move on to the turn where I had another tough decision here, as the turn is a extremely draw-heavy card that completes Albert's straight in a very disguised way, gives me an open ender, and puts a double flush draw on the board that I don't have. I get check two, which is kind of a cool play, I think, from Albert. And I, after thinking about it a little bit, decided to check behind here with King Jack high. River being a backdoor flush card with the 6 of clubs. Again, Albert goes for the slow play with the check, a very sneaky trap here. And this time I do step in it a little bit and fall for the trap by deciding that my hand definitely needs to turn itself into a bluff. And I go ahead and bet. And Albert finds the check raise, which is kind of a no-brainer, I suppose. And of course I folded and, laughed that I got my hand caught in the cookie jar. So we'll just go ahead and watch Albert check raise me here on the river, as I am very disappointed to see this, as I was hoping to get the fold, of course. Even a call would have made me, was the end of me, but certainly the raise here is, I'm saving face a little bit here, a little hot posturing, but I have nowhere to go with here. So let's go ahead and take a look in the solver and see what we think. So I have everything queued up, but let's go ahead and start where we should start, right at the start. So, this is Albert's opening range pre, and he's c-betting this flop 90%. This makes a lot of sense. He has a strong range advantage here. And let's go ahead and take a look at my range. So the first part about this hand that was sort of interesting was the pre-flop decision. And I want to call attention to this top left quadrant of my range here in PioSolver. This is the 6-max GTO limit hold'em big blind defense range in this situation. One thing you can note, King Queen off and King Jack off, Queen Jack off, Queen 10 off, Jack 10 off, King 10 off, Ace 10 off are all basically pure calls pre-flop. These hands are not 3-betting. Ace Jack off a little bit of 3-betting, but not very much. We can see that the vast majority of Ace Jack is even flatting pre. Ace Queen a little bit more, but not even 50% of the combos 3-betting pre. And Ace King is mostly 3-betting pre, but even flatting pre is fine with Ace King off. Why? Well, it's important in a blind battle when you have such a wide range to not have some board textures where you simply can never have a good hand. And Broadway board textures are ones where people are very, very unbalanced in these blind battles. If I were to go ahead and take the commentator's advice and 3-bet my King Jack off, 100% of the time, that means that I'm probably also 3-betting King Queen, Ace Jack. And now you can start to make the argument for Ace 10 and Queen Jack. I am starting to completely cap my calling range. I will never be able to hit a Broadway board very hard. The solver likes to solve this problem by 3-betting the suited versions of the hands. Notice that it's pure 3-betting with Ace King suited, Ace Queen suited, Ace Jack suited, all the way down to basically Ace 6 suited is one of the first hands that basically calls, and most of the suited aces are just 3-betting to build a pot. Again, suited Broadway, same thing. King 10 suited, a little bit of calling. Queen Jack suited, pure calling. But and then mixing in 3-bets from some other types of hands. I mean, it's got funny hands like 10-5 suited, 10-4 suited that were pure 3-bets pre. It's got a bunch of suited 1-gappers and 2-gappers and 0-gappers. So we can see that the solver's kind of trying to construct its range in a more tricky way where it's trying to hit different board textures with different parts of the range. So I like my pre-flop play, and it's a spot I know pretty well. As we move on to the flop, now we're looking at my flop strategy here. I've been rambling about the pre-flop range, but we're already at the flop node here. We do notice that I do get to raise this flop quite a lot, but there's a small problem with raising my king jack off here. Notice that king jack is a pure call. There's basically almost no raising with this hand, although it does not lose much EV to do so. It's just more of a balancing problem. The reason is because we have so many bluffing candidates on this kind of board texture. And yeah, sure, we also have a bunch of pairs. We hit this board a little harder than Villain does. We have more one-pair hands, but we have infinite bluffs to choose from in a completely capped range. We don't have any aces, kings, queens, jacks, nines. We don't have any of these premium suited Broadways. We have a weaker range than our opponent. We need to make sure that we have some drawing hands in our calling range to protect that range. If I start raising king jack, then I just have all these gut shots and open enders. Notice that the solver wants to mix in raises with plenty of other draws. You've got the queen jack off. You've got the jack 7 off. Where's jack 7? Right here, which is raising 40-ish% of the time. You've got 7-8 off, which is raising 40-ish% of the time. You've even got weaker ones like 8-6 off that's raising almost half the time. So the solver is finding bluff raises. The solver is wanting to raise all sorts of weak hands, but it wants to do it with hands that have more incentive to get immediate fold equity and mix up its range so it doesn't have the one type of hand that looks very obvious on this board. Although it is a little interesting that it'll raise king queen but not king jack. I guess it wants to target a lot of hands that Villain has that have a jack in their hands. Just even though king queen's going to be the best hand when it gets anything to fold, it benefits from the immediate fold equity. Notice that if we do raise here, look at the hands that Villain's immediately folding. Look at the blue. Look at all these weak hands that are folding, but they're mostly made up of bad king highs and weaker hands. He's almost never folding any ace high except for a little bit of ace deuce. So having a king in my hand is kind of bad if we're trying to target a lot of immediate folds. If these are the hands that I'm mostly targeting, and I'm also not even really getting anything better to fold, right? Really, the only better hand I'm maybe getting to fold is a sliver of ace deuce off. So we have to be a little bit cautious about raising too much here when we can have infinite draws. I haven't even talked about all the spade draws that we can have on this flop, or the flush draws that we can have on this board, of which the solver is going to do some mixing as well. So I went with the call. I've ruined our thing here, but the solver, the turn is the 8 of double flush draw, and notice that my opponent did have jack 7 suited here, and he went for a check raise in the in-game. And I think it was a good play, but the solver somewhat disagrees. And one of the reasons why the solver somewhat disagrees is because this hand is good enough to go for a bet 3-bet. So you want to be thinking when you have a very good hand and you unblock pairs. That's another key thing about the straight being very strong here, is how's the best way to pile money into this pot? If he bets, look at a lot of the value hands that I will raise that he's crushing, that he can get in 3-bets against. I mean, I'm raising queen 10 for top pair and a gutter. I'm raising, all sorts of combos of 2-pair like 9-8 off. 8-5 off is raising a decent amount of time, although not all the time, guys. This is not a pure raise with bottom 2 pair, but I'm raising a lot of hands, 16% of the time that he can go ahead and get in his 3-bet with when he has the jack 7 suited, which is just a pure bet 3-bet here. Very, very happy. Jack 7 off. He has a lot of combos of straights and they all want to just start jamming, right? So I do think that might have been a good play, but I also understand the check. In a lot of tournament situations, people are going to play cautiously. We are on the stone bubble, and maybe he just thinks that this is a board where I'm going to be forced to stab. So when he checked, well, I had king jack. What was I supposed to do? It looks like the solver does lean towards a bluff. I would have thought this was a little bit lower, given that I still have king jack high with a little bit of showdown value. It looks like king queen doesn't want to bet, but king jack mostly does. Now, we can look at the individual combos, but it doesn't seem to make much of a difference. If you look in the bottom right corner of my screen, you can see all of the flavors of king jack are basically close to the same in terms of EV and in terms of betting frequency here. So whether I have flush blocking cards or not, it's just not that big of a deal in this very, very wide range situation. And obviously, I am betting a huge percentage of the time. I'm betting 52.5% overall. So I could have easily bet here. Checking doesn't really lose any EV. We can see that if I do checking or bet and get check raised, that I obviously have to continue. And king jack is a funny hand that's now even starting to throw in a few 3-bet bluffs, because I do block that all-important jack, which is a very key card to block here. I do have a lot of queen jack myself, so I want to build my bluffing range around the jack, and theoretically I could have gone down a very aggressive rabbit hole here trying to win this pot. Instead, I went for the super passive approach with the check-check line, and when the 6 of diamonds comes again, we can see that if Villain didn't bet the turn with his jack 7, he is going ahead and betting it again. He's supposed to bet here for value in the river. Another spot where he is going to bet 3-bet, right? So if he bets here, Again, I'm supposed to value raise pretty thin here. I'm basically raising any straight. I'm even raising some two pair. Look, I'm raising 6-5 off half the time here. So he could certainly get me to raise any straight that I can have. Ace 7 is looming here. It's a big part of my range at this point. And obviously, even though the backdoor flush draw came in, the solver thinks Jack 7 off is clearly strong enough to still bet 3-bet here and not be worried about flushes. There are some flush combinations, but it's just not that big of a deal. He did go for another check, and we can see that my hand again could have considered a check back, but bluffing here is certainly an option too. That's the one I took in game. I feel fine about my play. I think given this, I think I could have bet the turn, I could have bet the river. Both options were sort of reasonable. I went with one and not the other. Notice how thin we're going for value here. We're basically value betting any 6. So, I mean, I'm value betting ace 6 here and trying to get called by king high or ace high. So I certainly have a lot of cards that I wake up with on the turn. Even after check on the turn, on the river, I bet 57% of the time. And this is a spot that people struggle with in game, guys. They really struggle with finding aggression on the later streets after checking an earlier street. Notice that the solver does keep some good hands that are, that check behind on the turn. I do have some 9x here for second pair. It's not like I have nothing here, although 9x is a little bit on the weak side. It's certainly strong enough to go for value after a check on the turn. So it's not like I have, only a river improvement here. I have plenty of hands that were just sort of like playing cautiously, and, I also improve on that card a decent amount of the time. So I have a lot of potential bluffing candidates. I also have some backdoor flushes, and I am, of course, finding some random bluffs. So if we look at my lowest EV hands here, what would be some low EV bluffs here? We're finding some bluffs from Jack X, basically here. Jack 4 off, 3 off, 2 off that decided not to bluff earlier. And then some weak King X are turning themselves into bluffs. These are all kind of this low left quadrant here, basically pure bluffing. Anything that's worse than ace high, because when I bet, what am I targeting? Well, look, I'm targeting ace high. In fact, I make ace queen indifferent here. So the goal here is that I'm trying to get a hand as good as ace queen to fold. Ace king looks like it would be a little too good to fold, but I'm sure there's plenty of people that would even fold that. If I look back here, am I betting anything for value? Yeah. So the reason ace king can't fold is because I'm betting ace queen for like a little bit of perceived value here. This does not appear to be a bluff. It seems like a little bit of low EV value here, but we can see that I'm definitely bluffing this spot a lot, and villain definitely is going to have a tough decision with all of his ace highs. Obviously in game, he did have the jack 7 suited, which he's not really supposed to have, and of course, I got check raised, and we could see that, having bluffed it, of course, king jack is just a pure fold now. I'm not doing anything extra spewy here. I have plenty of flushes, and at this point, it would be more key for me to block a flush card. It looks like there's a real sliver of 3-bet barrel, 3-bet bluffing the river here, and it's all built around the ace of diamonds in my hand here with this like ace queen. This ace queen combo here. If we look at another similar combo here, the ace 7 with the ace of diamonds, or apparently this 7 of diamonds. It appears to be the 7. These aren't bluffing because these are straight, right? But okay, ace 5. This one's bluffing with the 5 of diamonds and some with the ace of diamonds. So these are the rare bluffs. But overall, I would say I played the hand fairly standardly after looking at the solver here. A very interesting hand, and these blind battles can be very tough in the late stages of a big tournament where your opponents are going to be playing well. And obviously, Limit Hold'em is a game that some people have studied immensely and others haven't, but it is a tough game to play. And even though I lost this pot, I feel like I came out of this blind battle more or less unscathed. And we'll see plenty of future hands here from me on the stream table. And let me know what questions you guys have. This was an interesting one. See you guys soon. Thanks.